Ending our virtual dental shadower session today. We want to remind you that there won't be any quiz today. All right, let's get started. We are very fortunate to have Brandon today for today's session. I'm handing the mic over to you, so feel free to start whenever you'd like.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Brandon Choung. I am a D1 student at UCSF School of Dentistry in San Francisco, California, and let's get started. I'm happy to be here. So a little bit about myself. I graduated high school, did not know what career I wanted to do. And with doing so, I went to community college to kind of find myself. After kind of formulating and knowing that I wanted to do dentistry in my way from community college onto UC Irvine, I was able to make a substantial impact in my community, and I'll talk about that later in the next few slides. Following graduation from UC Irvine, I graduated with a biosci degree and did the post-bac program, which is 1 year long at UCSF. So some tips for taking the DAT. So if you guys don't know about the DAT, it's a sum of multiple of sections. So there is a bio, general chemistry, organic chemistry, QR, which is math, reading comprehension, and PAT. So I kind of put like a little image on the right so that you guys could know, I guess, how the DAT is scored. There's a total science section where it is composed of bio, GChem, and OChem, and that's kind of your total science score. PAT is its own score. Meanwhile, reading, comp, QR, and all the total science groups are under the academic average. And how do I go back? Okay, there you go. So some tips that I have for taking the DAT, some recommended materials. A lot of people say DAT Bootcamp, Destroyer, Chad's videos using the AP Bio book, PAT Booster, and Ferrali's notes, which really helps you for bio. For me in particular, I used DAT Bootcamp, Destroyer, Chad's videos, and PAT Booster, and I really found DAT Bootcamp to be the most helpful. The user interface is very easy to use, but also they have so many practice tests where you could really increase your score and see how well you know the material, which was really nice. And purchasing a DAT bootcamp, or I think even for free, they have a 10-week study schedule that I kind of followed by religiously. First started off following it, and I soon began to realize I couldn't handle how much content you had to complete in each day. So I kind of created my own schedule and studied for about 3-ish months, not 10 weeks. And so some tips that I have for each section. So I think for OChem, I personally didn't do well in undergrad. I was like a CB type of student for OChem, and I really found making flashcards from the questions that I saw in DAT Bootcamp to be the most helpful. They have a reaction table sheet that I literally like memorized inside and out and try to understand. So I think that really helped me excel on the OChem DAT portion. GChem, I think practice problems really helps because there's so many different ways to ask the same question, and just memorizing a formula sheet given by DAT Bootcamp. For math, I didn't do this, but I found that a lot of people found this to be the most beneficial for them for math. That was my hardest subject. They use OrgoMan QR videos on YouTube. And then reading comp. So there's two different types of methods that I thought to be the most helpful. So there's search and destroy, and also the vanilla method. So search and destroy is basically you go through the question, you find keywords, and you go into the passage and try to find those words in the passage. So most likely than not, the questions are in chronological order. And so by finding one key phrase, you'll be able to, if you look at the first question, you'll most likely find a key phrase in that question in the first or second paragraph, and so on and so forth. The vanilla method is basically you skim everything fast and then answer the question quickly. So I found the vanilla method to be the most helpful. I liked understanding what I was reading. Search and destroy works well for a lot of people. For me, just not so much because I didn't know, I guess, the emotions that the reader had when I was given that question. And then PAT, I have a code for PAT Booster that you can use. I think it's like dentistry with B20 or something like that, 20% off. And I think this was the most helpful to me as well, because I started off getting like 14s on the PAT section. And once I subscribed to PAT Booster, it really increased my score to getting a 22. So I definitely recommend using that platform as a study tool. So advice on staying motivated. I'd recommend just looking at the bigger picture and knowing your why. I feel like sometimes when you get caught up as a pre-dental student, you focus and you're just thinking about good grades, tacking on all these opportunities to like enhance your application. You're trying to figure out why you didn't get in, whatever, the whole 9 yards. And I think, when you take a step back and you look at why you're doing things, or like if you're doing it for your family or if you're doing it for yourself or whatever it is, just like let that drive you to get through, the hardest times of your pre-dental journey. I highly recommend, and this is really hard for me to follow, but don't compare yourself to others. You're on your own journey / path. Oftentimes than not, you're going to always compare yourself to your peers, and it's good. It's good to, compare yourself to the best, but don't let it hurt you in a way that, it kind of demoralizes you and makes you unmotivated. You want it to fuel your energy and let you get through, hard times, and enjoy the process and look at how far you've come. And that kind of ties in with the first part, like just looking at the bigger picture, knowing your why, just always taking a step back, and just, taking breaks, because, burnout is really real. And a lot of people tend to just pedal to the metal, just try to grind through it as much as they can. But sometimes it's better to take breaks because you perform better when you're at your best self. So some community service. So do something that interests you. So in regards to community service, do something that interests you. There's a lot of humanitarian and dental opportunities. It doesn't need to be dental related. And what I mean by humanitarian, it could be as little as picking trash up from the beach, or you can also collect a lot of toothpaste and toothbrushes and give it to the underserved population. For me, I just wanted to go deep. I want to deep dive more into like what I did when I was an undergrad. I was super passionate about providing dental care to like the underserved community. I thought that kind of hit home to me because, I had limited access growing up. So when I was president and I co-founded this pre-dental fraternity that focused on mentorship and community service and bridging the gap between healthcare and dental accessibility, I initiated this mobile dental clinic project. And it sounded crazy, because as a pre-dental student, you really don't have any idea what you're doing. I still don't know what I'm doing. But I definitely did not know what I was doing when I said, I just wanted to start like a mobile dental clinic project. But it soon began like this little dream that I had that interested me became a reality. So I applied to the Ellen DeGeneres show, and I did not expect a response back whatsoever. And luckily, she invited us to our show, donated a lump sum of money. And following that, we decided to create a fundraising gala. And with this fundraising gala, me and Vania, we made 6 other committees within our fraternity that would be, that would spearhead a little part of the gala to make it come to life. And so with doing so, we raised a lot of money. We were able to buy an RV trailer transform it into a 2 operatory mobile dental clinic. And we had our first clinic event, I believe, a year and a half ago. So yeah, all in all, I think the reason why I wanted to bring this up to you guys is that just do something that interests you. And it doesn't have to be at this capacity, but I feel like when, if you're going to do anything, do something worthwhile, do something that is meaningful to you, that hits home. And I think it won't feel like a job, or it won't feel like a chore when you do something that interests you. So choosing the right dental schools, or what things I considered when I was picking a dental school, there's quite a few things. First of all, I applied to just California schools, knowing that I finished the postbaccalaureate program. I put myself in a really good position. I only applied to 5 dental schools in California, but I don't recommend doing that. If you did not finish a post-bac program, I highly recommend applying maybe to 12 to 15 schools. But some things to really consider when you are applying, you want to look at their clinical experience. If you do plan on being a general practitioner or a general dentist, you really want to see how well that dental school prepares you to move on to clinic. And I think that's super important. Just because, this is, you're investing in yourself and your career, but also, when you're on your interview day, you really want to look at how much exposure each dental student gets, how they get their patients, how many, what kind of, what scope of work do they do as a general dentist or general pre-doc student. And I also wanted to mention that, sorry, my text message is popping in the top right, but I also wanted to mention that if you do want to go to a school that is that is well versed in their clinical experience, I think that you should also consider picking a school that doesn't have a specialty program. And the reason why I say that is because when complex cases arise at your dental school, they don't refer it to the residents. They actually make you take care of it. So I think that's something really to consider also. For me, UCSF is a pass, no pass school. Unfortunately, we aren't intertwined with the med school curriculum, but if you did want to, specialize in oral surgery, I highly recommend going to a school that is pass, no pass, and that has a didactic course that's intertwined with the med school curriculum. And then location was huge for me, hence why I only applied in California. And tuition is something to really consider, since, student debt is real. It really accumulates. It's insane. You really want to consider the in-state versus out-of-state tuition costs. So there's some schools like UCSF, for example, that even though you are out of state, you could apply for a California residency and get in-state tuition after going to school here for 1 year. So that's all some things that you can consider and ask your interviewer, or even the admissions representative for each school, to see if they have that benefit. Also, the culture and environment, that's huge for me. That's really huge, because I think that if you're going to spend the next 4 years at a dental school, why not spend it somewhere that is going to be fulfilling, but also going to challenge you academically, socially, and where you're going to make the most memories at. Because I feel like, you're going to be grinding and hustling, but also you want to be in an environment that isn't so malignant or isn't so cutthroat. And I feel like, for me personally, having gone to a pass no pass school at UCSF, it's been really, really nurturing, very collaborative, and familial like. So it's been really nice to just be at a school that is mainly pass no pass, and getting a 71% is literally the same as getting a 95. And another thing to consider is campus clubs and opportunities. So I think this is quite important because, I think this is quite important important because just ignore the text messages at the top right. But I think this is quite important because when you're going to a school, you want to make sure that not only you're learning through your didactic courses, but also I feel like I've found the most benefit through attending lunch and learns hosted by clubs. And the reason why I say this is because during these lunch and learns, through these clubs on campus, they actually bring out other faculty members or students that have graduated from UCSF or even residents from other schools or our own school to talk more about their specialty or even different topics about dentistry that aren't really taught in school. So I really think that's super important to just know that, that school that you're applying to really has that opportunity for you. And then the next biggest one is the boards passing rate. I think you all want to go to a school that has, a high boards passing rate, and they all pass at the first time. So what a typical day is like. So what a typical day is like at my school. So I kind of did a screenshot fall, winter, and spring quarter. And as you can tell, Monday through Friday, we do have class or either clinic. What's nice about going to a pass, no pass school or even UCSF in general is that we have these ISO days, which is so nice. ISO stands for Independent Study Options. So these are the days where you could either catch up with schoolwork, go hang out with friends, or even do your laundry or any other things that you have to do on the side not related to school. So this is the time that you could like really decompress, and it's nice to have it twice a week, which is I'm really thankful for that. And this thing called PCC. So PCC is we go in once a week on Fridays. We actually work on each other or our classmates, and we act as if we're a provider. So we kind of simulate a patient visit from start to finish. We check their medical history, blood pressure, if they have any allergies to medication, their gum tissue health, and give them oral hygiene instructions as well. So it's been pretty nice to kind of get that exposure early on before we even move on to, working on real patients that need dental care. And then we also go to sim lab twice a week. So it's either operative, which is kind of like more restorations based fillings, class 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s. And then crown and bridges is when, you do a crown prep and do a restoration or temp for it and put a crown on. So it's nice to get that exposure and go into sim lab twice a week. I know that my second year will get even more time in clinic and in the sim lab. So I'm super excited for that and looking forward to it. And all in all, I just wanted to mention that dental school is a lot of fun, actually. It's just as fun as undergrad. I just want to include some pictures throughout my D1 year. It's nice that, my school, as I said, again, is pass, no pass, but also we have these things called dental fraternities. Everyone joins one and we kind of build a family within that. So it's been really nice to, study hard, but also take a break from school and have fun with my classmates. So I'm really thankful just for the opportunity that like I've been given. Also, if you are ever, if your back's ever against the wall and you want to quit doing dentistry, I hope that like maybe through this PowerPoint, or even if you want to contact me, that I can inspire you to do it, because I'm having a great time here. So yeah, that concludes the rest of my PowerPoint. If there's any questions, I'd love to answer it.
Okay, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about your dental journey. It's truly appreciated, and I know I learned a lot from your presentation. And to our viewers, I just want to remind you once again that we will not have a quiz tonight. So we do have a few questions in the the chat. So the first question is, when do clinical rotations begin in dental school?
Clinical rotations began, I think, in the third year, if I'm not mistaken. So I think right when you transition into clinic, they have you go on rotations to either the hospital to go to the oral surgery department or stay on campus to do peds and ortho and etc.
Okay. The next question is, was Casper a requirement? And if so, how did you prepare for it?
Ooh, Casper. Yeah, I'm not too sure what Casper is. I know the DAT is required in the United States. Not too sure what Casper is.
Oh, okay, no problem. So another question is, what is the downside to pass and fails? And how do you distinguish yourself from the rest of students?
Wow, that's a great question. And I'm still trying to figure that out, how to distinguish myself from like my classmates if I do want to specialize. I think one big thing is to do research at UCSF. We're a big research institution. I think we're like top 5 in NIH funding. So I think delving into research is super important, but also getting board positions in clubs to show that you're actively involved at UCSF is super important too. And I think that kind of distinguishes you from the next person. Since we are pass no pass, there is no rank. So yeah, a lot of people do research and also board positions as well. I think a downside to pass fail is that a downside to pass fail. Let me think about this one. I think a downside to pass fail that for me especially is that I got quickly involved in a lot of clubs and got board positions for it. And it's nice that I did. However, I think because of pass fail, I thought that like I could handle both, but it's definitely not as doable as I thought. So I think what pass fail has really taught me is to like manage my time, but also to accept, which I don't think is the bad thing, but I think it's one thing it's taught me is to accept that like I may not know everything and it's going to take time. And I think that's like, I guess the good and bad to pass fail schools.
Yeah, that's true. And just another personal thing, it must be much less stressful when you have pass and fail courses because
Yeah.
you're not always striving to get 4.0s. It must be a lot less stressful, right?
Yeah, by far it's not stressful whatsoever. I have finals next week and I feel like if I was an undergrad right now I'd be freaking out. But
Yeah,
since
of
I'm in
course.
dental school, it's completely different. It's a different ball game. I feel like, if you set like a couple of days before, you could definitely pass. But I feel like in undergrad, I always spent like a week or two in advance to study for one exam. So I guess that's the bright side of pass fail.
Of course. The next question is, what did you find to be the hardest thing to do or to learn in D1? Was there anything that you were not expecting or that you weren't prepared for?
Yeah, I think what was super hard in my D1 year was anatomy. Anatomy lab. It was super hard because um, we couldn't go there in person and we had to identify structures through, I guess, our screen and kind of learn that way. So they would have like a cadaver or a deceased human body and they would kind of cut it up and put a camera right next to it, but you just don't know what you're looking at. So it was really hard to learn in that aspect, and to like prepare for anatomy lab exams or practicals in the fall quarter.
Okay. The next question is, so this applicant is applying for this cycle, and they're asking, from what you have heard or know, how serious is it to take a DAT exam in July?
Oh, I did that. I think I took the DAT in August. So I personally, if I were in your shoes, I personally would not apply that cycle. Or if you do want to apply just because you have to take a whole year off just to wait for the next cycle, I think that, apply to some schools that you think you'll get in. But since the dental application is rolling admission, it's really hard to, I guess, get interviews if you apply later than August. So if you do plan on taking it in July, take it early July if possible, because I think you have to wait like a 2-week turnaround for your scores to be submitted on ASDA.
Okay. The next question is, what is the exam schedule like? Do you get exams at the end of semester, or is it quarters?
Yeah, so we're on a quarter system here at UCSF, and we get an exam maybe, it feels like every 2 weeks, maybe. Sometimes in the middle of the quarter, it goes like a 3-week turnaround. But I think every 2 weeks we have an exam, whether it's like our didactic course. Right now we're taking neuro and also pharmacology. So I think, we all have finals, but I think our exams kind of turn around every like 2 or 3 weeks.
At UCSF, what is the ratio between like American pre-dental, like dental students, and international students? Do the international students have a high chance of acceptance or lower compared to those who live in the area?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think for international students, it is typically a little bit harder. I think in general, just to any school in general, if I'm not mistaken. But I think at UCSF, there's only like 3 or 4 international kids, but there sure are a lot of out-of-state kids, which I think is something nice that UCSF is doing. They're trying to accept more people out of state than just California-only schools or students.
Okay. From speaking with your peers, who I assume had a wide range of experiences that got them into UCSF dental school, how critical is a DAT score for acceptance compared to your GPA or dental experiences?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question. So I think your DAT is a small factor to your application. How the dental admissions looks at your application, they have a holistic view. So they, of course, the DAT and your GPA is probably the highest at its priority, but there's also other avenues in your application that you can really enhance that will set you apart from another applicant and could possibly get you into the school. So what I primarily tell, pre-dental students is to, formulate a bar graph with each section. So there is research, there's extracurricular activities, there are work opportunity hours, there is dental shadowing hours, and your awards, I think. And what you want to do is you want to make a bar graph and see how many hours you have for the ones that you could put hours for, not the awards, and see if everything is aligned. And to really enhance your application, you want to make sure that, you have a steady kind of bar graph, that there's nothing lacking in your application that, an admissions committee member could say, oh, this person, John, is lacking research hours. Maybe we shouldn't accept him. So that's kind of the route I would go, is trying to formulate, like a bar graph on your Excel sheet, put all the hours down for each section and make sure that there's like a straight line. Typically you want at least like 100 hours of dental shadowing. Community service, I'm sure it's probably 100 plus. And then research, if your school doesn't offer research, it's completely fine. I know a lot of schools are mindful of that, and that won't really hurt your application, but you just want to make sure you just have a well-rounded application that that if your DAT score is lacking, other avenues in your application can make up for that.
That's great. At UCSF, what was the interview process like?
I was super chill, super laid back. It was very conversational. It was a 30-minute interview with a student and then 30-minute interview with a faculty member. And then the rest was kind of a blur because I was like so anxious and nervous. But it's honestly a fun day. I just didn't like how we had our interview after they provided lunch. So I know like some people didn't eat their lunch because they were just like so nervous. For me, I was so hungry I had to eat. I just made sure that there's nothing in my teeth while I was talking. But it's a fun day overall. It's a definitely fun day, and I think at least the interviews that I had in California, it's a fun day. It's a day to get to know you, to know that you are who you are in your application. And yeah, just whenever you get an interview to a school, don't freak out. Just know that they picked you out of all the applicants. They want to see you in person. They want to know you, who you are, what you stand for, and if your morals and I guess your personality kind of fits with the school. Because I really noticed that like my class is super close because we're kind of all alike in one way or another.
That's great. The next question is, what's the learning format at UCSF? Is it problem-based learning or is it traditional?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's not problem-based learning like USC, but I think it's traditional at our school. For the most part, it is traditional. I think a lot of the stuff carries on too. At least for the dental classes, a lot of it carries on from quarter to quarter.
Okay. I'm just trying to see if there's any more questions. Sorry. For someone who's taking a gap year, to the best of your knowledge, what seems to be a better option, dental assisting or taking more courses to possibly bring up their GPA?
Dental assisting or taking more courses to bring up your GPA?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I definitely think taking more courses to bring up your GPA. I think one thing dental admissions like is if you have a strong upward trend. And what I mean by that is that if you had a 2.0, your first 3 years or first 2 years of college, you want to make sure that the last 2 years you're getting straight A's. Same with if you had to choose between, shadowing hours and, picking or deciding to do school. I highly recommend doing school because I think the shadowing hours can come later, but your grades kind of stay with you forever. You want to make sure that like you bring up your GPA first so that you're somewhat a competitive applicant, and then you could showcase yourself through your dental shadowing hours.
Okay. So another question that somebody else has asked is, what is your opinion on the University of the Pacific, if you have one? I heard great things about it, but also heard serious downsides like tuition not including room and board costs that are expensive.
Yeah, UOP. We hate that school. We don't talk about them. They're the other SF school. I'm just kidding. I think it's a phenomenal school. I think the program itself is one of a kind. I was actually considering UOP over UCSF if I had gotten in. I think the one thing about UOP is that they really prepare you clinically and didactically. I know a lot of people have taken their board exams and they do phenomenal and they don't need to study at all because UOP prepared them in such a way where, a lot of the information was not fluff and it was straight to the point, and it just stuck with them. And I know a lot of successful people that have gone to UOP, but one thing I really like about UOP that I've really realized now being in dental school is that they really prepare you clinically. I don't think I've heard of a school, at the best of my knowledge, that has a lot of the pre-doctoral students or even the dental students, quote unquote, do like veneer cases and a ton of crown and bridges and more cosmetic work and implants. And I think that's super awesome to just get that exposure. If you want to become a GP, I highly recommend going to UOP. I think, the biggest downside is, cost of tuition. But there's so many ways to pay off your tuition. You could do the HPSP, which is serving in the military after 3 years, or after they pay for how many years of tuition they pay for. So if they pay for 3 years of UOP, then you have to serve 3 years, and your entire tuition is paid off. And that's one avenue to go. There's also doing community dentistry, where you are stationed at an underserved population and you serve 3 years there, get basic salary, and then they pay off your tuition that way too. That one's a little bit more competitive to get in. But also, I feel like, for most people, I feel like dental school debt is inevitable. Everyone's going to accumulate debt. And I think, investing in UOP is well worth it. And don't ever, decide not to do dentistry because of the debt you accumulate. Worry about that later, because you never hear a dentist that's unable to pay for their own student debt.
That is true. And connecting to this question, are Ivy colleges worth the price tag? Why or why not? Like, do you believe they are able to give you something more than other schools?
I think a lot of Ivy League dental schools have something unique about them in particular. I think Penn, they just renovated their clinic. If you look at it online, it's beautiful. I've never seen a school like that. I mean, it's like almost equivalent to UOP. It's beautiful campus. Harvard has pass fail. I think Columbia is pass fail also, but then their med school curriculum is intertwined with dental school didactic courses. So you're taking classes with med students, so it really prepares you for oral surgery. So I think each school is unique in its own way. It's worth going to if you're looking for that special thing, or if you're looking for something in particular that stands out about that school. I think the best way to find out if that school is right for you is to do research on their website. Also contact current dental students, or even faculty or admission representatives of that school with questions that you have.
Okay, great. So that was the last question for today. I just want to thank you again for taking the time to talk to us again. And to everyone else, I hope you have a great day.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. Feel free to, DM me or message me on my Instagram. I changed my name on the Zoom call. And also feel free to use my PAT booster link. I found it to be really helpful while studying for the DAT. So I hope you have a great day, and thanks for having me.